Chapter 564. To those who followed the sage, Nahan was an enigmatic and challenging figure. Yet they had managed to coexist well thus far because both the sage and Nahan had distinct roles that contributed to the betterment of the entire star of Nagran. Whenever Nahan infiltrated places where awakeners were oppressed or in danger, he would rescue them, and the sage would then look after and educate these people, integrating them into the community. While the sage focused on stabilizing their strongholds, Nahan would neutralize threats to these places, training the awakeners to defend the star of Nagran. During the times when these responsibilities were clearly divided, everything seemed to go well, especially in a world where the awakeners were constantly threatened. Nahan's terrifying abilities and awkward personality were actually comforting. But things started to get strange as the number of strongholds and people grew. Initially, those who joined the Star of Nagran were individuals who wanted nothing more than to save their lives and find a place to hide. However, as people began to settle and time passed, there emerged those who wanted to wield their newfound powers for revenge. It was inevitable that among those who had been forced to leave their homelands simply because they had awakened, there would be those with grudges. Most of their targets for revenge were loathsome nobles. While the sage tried to calm and prevent them from acting out, Nahan actually encouraged them. Everyone knew that the reason Nahan had not returned after completing his mission in the west was because of Urshi, who wanted revenge against the nobles in that region. Nahan was close to the awakeners who were filled with sorrow and thirst for vengeance. There were moments when he seemed to believe that aiding their rage was his very purpose. Those who believed they should use their power for greater causes genuinely admired and deeply followed Nahan. I know he's not the enemy. If I were ever in danger and seeking revenge, there would be no one better to help me. But I still fear him. I can't fathom what he's thinking. Longbottom, are you afraid of Nahan? Just then, the sage asked as if he had read the thoughts of the awakener named Longbottom, who nervously clenched his fists. Ashamed, Longbottom's face flushed as he stuttered. To be honest, I don't see him as a good comrade. I understand he does a lot for us, but isn't it well known that he really despises nobles? His visit to you now doesn't feel well intended. He expected the sage to respond with his usual warmth and talk about the importance of supporting one another as comrades. After all, the sage was someone who never expressed anger and instilled faith through love and warmth. However, the response he received was different. Yes, it is likely he is coming here to express his concerns. You think so too, Sage? But what could Nahan possibly be concerned about with you? Longbottom, how long have you been in the Star of Nagran? Caught off guard by the abrupt question, Longbottom hastily sifted through his memories. Over a year, definitely. I met you around the time winter began last year. I met Nahan 2 years ago, before the Star of Nagran even had a name. I was by his side for about that much. He had heard rumors that Nahan was among the oldest group of awakeners on the Star of Nagran, but he had never expected those to be true. Unable to hide his surprise, Longbottom found himself comforted by the sage's gentle words. At that time, Nahan was a deeply pained and vulnerable individual. He believed places like the Star of Nagran were necessary to help people like his fellow awakeners. That belief has not changed, but it seems that his own heart might have. Hearing this, Longbottom looked into the sage's eyes, still radiating warmth, and felt a deep sense of turmoil. His mind was a muddle of anger towards the ungrateful Nahan and concern for the sage. How could he change, Sage? Who else is there who cares for us more than you? At this, the sage merely smiled, a bitter twist to his lips. Thank you for saying so. However, Nahan may not feel the same way, or even if he once did, that may no longer be the case. Is it because we are treating the crown prince? The sage offered no reply to this, apparently not wishing to burden others with undue concern. I entrust you to support our brothers and sisters while I'm away tomorrow, Longbarton. Ultimately, Longbarton left the sage's room drained. He returned to his own room and scanned for the bespectacled awakener among the others while giving cursory replies to their questions. Nezo, can we talk for a moment? Nezo was one of the 4 awakeners who had followed the sage to the crown prince's palace. A young man who wore glasses. He seemed to have had some scholarly pursuits in his past. Nezo wasn't even his real name, or so people had heard. Still, he was more concerned than anyone else about the risk Nahan posed and worried for the sage. Longbarton and Nezo retreated to a secluded area, avoiding the others. After all, no one in the Crown Prince's palace was going to pay attention to individuals as disheveled as they were. Longbarton relayed his conversation with the sage in full, then openly vented his frustrations. The sage said not to worry even if Nahan comes. Granted, Nahan has always listened to the sage, but who knows if he will this time. The sage has to go to a dangerous place tomorrow with only an idiot like Daimon. What if he runs into Nahan's gang? We have to protect him. Did the sage say that? Anger flared on Nezo's face. That damn southerner, utterly useless. I knew from the moment the sage took him in that a day like this would come. What can a bloodthirsty southerner do? Nezo, who had been with the sage for the longest time, seemed to know quite a lot about Nahan as well. What is it with that Nahan? What's his issue? Well, you have earned the sage's trust to be here, so you have a right to know. After a moment's hesitation, Nezo began speaking. Years ago, when the Star of Nagran first appeared, the sage planned to lead us all in fleeing the Empire. Nahan was tasked with finding companions to join us until we could find a land to settle. But as you know, things have changed quite a lot since then. I can see that. The early days of the Awakeners must have been focused solely on survival. But as awakened nobles like Duke Paleta emerged and cavalry was formed, the Empire's attitude toward the Awakeners began to shift. Longbarton didn't particularly hold the cavalry in high regard, but his ears were intact, and since arriving at the capital, he picked up various rumors. Whatever was the case, it was true that people were less afraid of the Awakeners thanks to the cavalry's current exploits. Nearly a year had passed since the cavalry had been established, and still no other organization like that existed outside the Or Empire. His comrades, who had recently relocated to a western outpost, unanimously reported the situation in the western countries is even worse than in the Or Empire. It went without saying what life must be like for the Awakeners living in places people fled from in terror. Anyone with a head on their shoulders could assume that outside the Empire was even more dangerous. If I'd continued living dangerously, as I did before entering the Star of Nagran, maybe, Longbarton thought. But in the current circumstances, I wouldn't dream of fleeing the Empire. Nezo nodded as he looked at Longbarton's face. Yes, most people will understand what I mean, just like you do. But that guy Nahan doesn't get it. He's been pestering the sage to keep his promises, even more so after encountering the cavalry. Promises? Nahan seems to think establishing a new outpost outside the Empire is a promise that must be kept. In fact, many of those who owe me their lives have said the same to the sage. They keep asking when we will move to the new place. I had no idea. You came here alone. When the sage explains we have no plans to leave, most people accept it. There are exceptions, of course. Nezo's face tensed up behind his glasses. In my opinion, the sage's current course of action is clearly better for all of us. But if Nahan concludes that the sage isn't going to keep his promises, he would ruin everything in a heartbeat. That couldn't happen. Longbottom knew how crucial the current moment was. Now he clearly understood what he needed to do. It even occurred to him that the sage might have trusted him for precisely this moment. Alright, let's take the initiative. We will stop him from meeting the sage. We will. According to Sarah, Nahan sustained severe injuries in the west and can hardly move. If we don't seize the opportunity, how will we catch him? He will surely contact us first. We will target that moment. A bit of unease flickered across Nezo's face. He was one of those who secretly feared Nahan's abilities. But you know what his abilities are like. Who doesn't have abilities? Have you forgotten who successfully handled things this time? Nahan won't use his full power against us. We know that. I don't know about the guys following him or the tricky ones like Hosanna, but Hosanna isn't here now. Besides, we have Daemon on our side. Daemon may be annoying, but with his abilities, we can counteract Nahan's. It may weaken us a bit, but it should be enough. To protect Sage, we have no choice but to step in. Finally, Nezo agreed, recognizing that this issue couldn't be avoided forever. Alright, let's do it that way. The two returned to the room to share the situation with the rest of their companions and suggested they unite in purpose. The group, initially hesitant, soon decided to join forces. Among them was Daemon, his face flushed as the thought of becoming the center of this alliance. Yudhir, did you hear what I just said? Yudhir lifted his head, noticing the small hand waving in front of his eyes. Kana was looking at him with a worried expression. No, what are you saying? I said that Hosanna is getting much better. How much of that did you miss? ... Had she been talking about that? He couldn't quite recall. Seeing that Yudhir remained silent, Kana lowered her head. You have seemed distracted ever since I first saw you. If you're tired, we can talk about this later. No, please repeat it. I will listen properly this time. Really? What's going on with you? What's going on? Something had indeed happened. Something he couldn't articulate. Kishir's words from yesterday about dreaming of the day he was executed still lingered in his mind. Unable to respond, Yudhir watched as Kana left the spot, whispering that he should rest. After that, Yudhir couldn't sleep a wink all night. And so, here he was now.